Welcome to Green and Growing, the podcast where we explore strategies, insights, and lessons that help you thrive in real estate and beyond. I'm your host, Wade Perry, and today I am honored to welcome Anthony Geraci. Anthony is a genuine powerhouse in the real estate and private lending space. He serves as the partner and CEO of Geraci LLP, a premier law firm specializing in banking, real estate, and private money lending. He's also the founder and vice chairman of the American Association of Private Lenders and a leader in multiple financial and legal ventures. Today, we're going to dive into how real estate has been impacted by the recent fires in Los Angeles, the challenges and the lessons that are being learned, and what industry professionals like Anthony can share with us to help you navigate crisis situations. So with that, I hope you all buckle up, get a pen, get paper, take some notes, because we've got a guy here in Anthony that can give you the nuggets you need that could change your family's trajectory through this crisis. Anthony, welcome to Green and Growing.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, it's wonderful to have you. There aren't a lot of guys that have all of your acumen. So let's start out with, it's great to have you here, obviously. You've been advising clients in real estate, banking, law for 17 years or more. How's your work intersected with disaster-related challenges, particularly when it comes to real estate financing and lending?
Yeah, and so, it's funny, as you talk about those, there's really, if you will, two sides of the coin, which everybody thinks about the owner, which makes sense, right? There's an owner of any property. But, at least from the lender's perspective, just as important is the lender who has, I would say, given some sort of financing, whatever the reason's there for those financing, to that property. And much like the owner wants to be protected of their investment, so does the lender. And so there's a lot of things that intersect between, I would say, kind of like a partnership between owner and lender, which is title insurance, for instance. That's a no-brainer that most people want to have. It's like, do we have title? Is title actually vested in the owner? And so title insurance is part and parcel of a lot of things, along with, some other insurance that may or may not be required by the lender, such as we can imagine we'll be talking about soon, is fire insurance, especially in hot places like California. Or let's say if you have a house near the beach and Laguna Beach or something like that, flood insurance. So these things of protecting the lender's investment, which of course have the idea of protecting the owner as well.
So the relationship of lender, insurer, homeowner, all have a vested interest in making sure the asset is protected. Correct. And obviously there's a premium to be paid for that. And those premiums can adjust based on different risks. And I think that many homeowners in other insurance agents I've spoken with, not necessarily about the LA fires, but generally as a realtor talking to people about property insurance, they make assumptions that I have insurance, therefore I'm covered and I'm fully covered. And the truth of the matter is they're fully covered for what's in the policy. So I guess my question to you is, from a legal standpoint, what are some of the common pitfalls that homeowners come across when it comes to insurance claims?
Yeah, I mean, there are myriad of pitfalls, right? Depending on the insurance claim itself, but just try to stay on topic of ours, which is the fire insurance. There's going to be a list of exclusions. So every policy has, if you will, a certain layout, if you will. One is, of course, what you probably paid attention to, which is that one page. Here's the insurance coverage. Here's what it covers, fire, blah, blah, blah. Here's the amount. Here's the premium. That stuff we're all pretty familiar with. Maybe you get what's called the additional insured, which will generally be your mortgagee or mortgagor, the lender, if in this case. But then there's like 15 other pages that you may not pay attention to, which is, hey, here's how we define everything. Usually there's a definition section, usually it's Exhibit A. And then Exhibit B is usually exclusions, right? And so as it pertains, of course, to the fires that we saw, one of the areas I would say of concern to homeowners is, how do these fires originate, right? How did they start? Because part of the exclusions, generally speaking, is arson. So, if it was a man-made fire and arson occurred, then that would be, at least on its face, an exclusion. Now, to give some comfort to homeowners, as they can imagine, nothing's cut and dry, right? Nothing is just, hey, it's arson, therefore everybody's excluded, right? Because you follow the path of the fires, either Palisades or Eaton if you want to. There were so many, if you will, issues. Um, and of course, I'm not to get out political things, but here's
No,
questions
no.
at least of what people should be asking. The fire hydrants didn't work. Why? Don't know. Hopefully that'll be determined, right? We had a reservoir that wasn't full at the time. What impact did that have on the fires, right? And so it's too simplistic to say, hey, arson causes fire, therefore your house burned down. I'm sorry. Well, arson may have started the fire, but then as in California, we start looking at what's contributory negligence. What contributed to the spread of that fire? Of course, we got the Santa Anas. We've got the reservoir. We've got possibly pumping issues, potentially lack of funding in the LA Fire Department, right? And maybe mismanagement by the cities. And we'll see how that plays out in votes in the future. But a lot of these are questions, right? And I don't think anybody has answers even at this stage, right? We're a month after the fire, when left with just several questions that no one has any answers to right now. But I think as the months unfold, we're going to get answers.
So let me dig into that just a little bit. And I think that what you just brought up is really, really good, that listeners should stop, rewind, listen to this again. As I started the question, we are not always insured to the level that we think we are. And just because we're insured doesn't mean we're covered for everything. And the number one thing that you nailed was the exclusion page. What is going to take your insurance policy or your perception of your benefit and make it null and void? And keep asking questions why. If somebody's got their policy, they see their exclusions, and obviously arson is excluded, but as you said, keep peeling back the layers. Would it be prudent for a homeowner to engage an attorney in a particular field to start asking these questions, or are they fine to do it on their own?
I think they can ask the questions on their own, right? If they start asking questions, right? And I think what you said is, too often we stop with, oh, I got insurance, so I'm covered. And that's really the end of inquiry, right? And unfortunately for so many people, this is now going to start the difficult process of, wait, I thought I was insured and I'm not. And so, or I may be underinsured, right? So there's a possibility you have insurance, but now you're underinsured. All those improvements you made to the property may not be covered depending on what the policy says as well. And so, yeah, I think a good inquiry starts with either their insurance agent or maybe an insurance broker, or maybe if they went direct, start really asking for a copy of the entire policy and start reviewing and start asking questions, and I hope it's not too basic, but what is insurance,
No.
Right? We talk about what is insurance at the end of the day. And you think about it, we pay a dollar amount, a premium, to shift the risk of loss from us to the insurer, right? That's all insurance is at the end of the day. I don't care what kind of insurance you buy. You're shifting some risk of loss from you to the insurer. Well, the caveat is to the extent you get covered in that insurance. Otherwise, that risk of loss again is back on you. So that's
correct. So a friend of mine, one of my best friends, has a 26-acre parcel in Agoura Hills, just over the hill from Malibu. And you might remember that fire about 5 years ago, wiped him out. His insurance agent, unbeknownst to my friend, had included into his policy not only full replacement value, but he also included, if I'm not mistaken, was additional living expense. And that provided them with all kinds of financial benefits to resume their lifestyle. An easy example that he gave me was like, we have a gym in our house. We no longer have that. We now have all 4 members of our family now have gym memberships covered. And so there's so many little clauses that can be added to a policy. And yes, those obviously come with an additional expense in the form of your premium. But as I joke with people sometimes, and maybe you're going to give me a different answer, Anthony, but have you ever seen somebody receive a check for insurance proceeds or insurance benefit, and they said, oh, this is too much money? It's never happened, has it?
Never.
But what they have said is, oh, that premium's too much.
Yeah.
In the moment of crisis, the premium becomes meaningless. And the benefit is obviously everything. So I think your counsel is very, very sage. Look at the exclusions, talk to your insurance broker, talk about additional clauses like additional living expenses and 100% replacement value. I can tell you that my wife and I, 5 years ago, after my friend lost his stuff, we went through and we photographed everything in the house.
Yep.
And we're now due to do it again. Do you find that helpful to people?
Absolutely. And so, it's funny also, it's, think about, and I love what we're talking about, which is, again, really read those policies, because there's going to be other exclusions that you may not think about too. It's like, let's assume you have a fire policy, for instance, and unfortunately, of course, we had very hot fire in the Eaton fire or Palisades, to where it burned everything and melted jewelry. Well, is your jewelry covered by your fire policy? Generally speaking, they're usually excluded. You need a separate policy for that too. So back to that underinsured stuff too. And so just my advice would be, what do you expect from insurance? What do you personally expect? And then sure, do you have that?
Good question. Great question to ask. It's funny. I've asked this to people for many, many years. Is there any insurance that you'd actually like to use?
Right.
And
Absolutely.
the answer is always no. I did have a lady once say she wanted to use her husband's life insurance, and that led to a very interesting conversation. But there's no insurance anybody wants to use, and nobody will give up their insurance. So it pays handsomely to dig in and find out, what are you covered for, what are you not, and keep asking. Let's shift more towards the insurance companies. In the past, we've seen insurance companies pull out of high-risk areas like California, making coverage more expensive or even unavailable sometimes. Do you think, I know that California went through a phase in the last decade as it relates to premiums. I'm guessing you're going to talk about that. Do you think these fires are going to affect the availability and cost of homeowners insurance in LA going forward?
Oh, absolutely. It already is. If you take a look at it. And it's not even just LA. Think about ancillary places like Orange County, even San Diego. We're talking about the entire state of California, because the thing about what California currently says, and maybe that'll change as a result of this, is California says is like, no, if you're going to be an insurance carrier for the state, you're going to be an insurance carrier for the state, and you have to write so many policies in these fire places as well. And we're going to regulate your premiums. I'm not, I would say, the foremost expert on insurance as far as, how it's regulated by the Department of Insurance. But the net effect of it is you're seeing a ton of insurance companies just leaving the state. It's like, if that's going to be the rules we're going to play by, and we can't make this work, we're not going to be in the state anymore. And so a huge unavailability of insurance, in fact, really causing California to create the what was it, the FAIR, the fire insurance there. Which, of course, you got to love that, as I understand it, I've not looked into it myself, is really, really expensive and doesn't cover much of anything.
So there is an element of that, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm out in Colorado and we deal with fire, but not like California. My understanding was the state of California passed something in the last 10 years where they capped what a premium increase. Yep. Where you could not increase your premium more than X amount or X percentage per year. And unfortunately, that kind of handcuffed the insurance companies when it comes to revenue, which then really put their, call it, risk premium at risk. And they probably went to the point where we can't do business like this, or we're going to go out of business. Did that happen, or did I just read that wrong somewhere?
No, that absolutely happened. And so insurance companies have, because again, also that was part of it. And of course, the other part of it is, if you're going to write insurance in non-fire hazard places, there's also that same, I think it was the same thing about 10 years ago. You also have to write a certain number of policies in these fire-ridden places or fire risk places. And also, we're going to control the premiums that you charge. And
so they didn't let the insurance companies cherry pick where they wanted to go.
Correct. And then also, they're not allowing them to adjust the risk based on the policy payments that they're happening. So they've really left insurance companies two choices. Do you write in California, or do you just leave the state? And unfortunately, a lot of them chosen the latter.
That is difficult. And the problem that I foresee, and maybe I'm completely going too far down the road on this, but Anthony, let's say that you're in California, and now there used to be a dozen carriers, Nationwide, Liberty Mutual, Chubb, et cetera. And there's a dozen carriers. And that creates competition. And that does its part in keeping premiums in check.
Yep.
We now have 10 of those carriers leave the state. We're left with 2. Well, what's to prevent runaway premiums when we no longer have multiple carriers to compete? Is that a risk?
Absolutely. I mean, and funny enough, who will be the runaway premium? It'll be the state of California, right? Because they'll be the only insurance game in town. And of course, they won't have to abide by the laws which they created 10 years ago. And so I don't know, I've not done the research on this, right? But here's my hunch, is the insurance companies that are remaining came into the state recently within the 10 years, understanding that, hey, we set this premium once, we might as well contemplate huge fire increases, and so our premium is going to be 10 times what it would say another insurance carrier that was admitted before the 10-year law change was taken into account.
That makes total sense, because someone that's been there for a long time has a much bigger book of business and therefore much more exposure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So, up to this point, we've talked about what people should probably look for in their policies, whether they're having to start fresh or whether they survived the fire. Regardless, you're going to have an in-depth conversation with your insurance agent, and we hope that people take, the tidbits that you've given them to good use. Let's shift our direction towards the homeowner that's actually dealing with fire damage. They either lost part of their house, they lost everything, and navigating the world of insurance claims and financial aid it's overwhelming for somebody that understands it, let alone the person that doesn't. What legal and financial steps should they be taking right now to protect themselves, to either maximize the recovery or smooth out the process?
Yeah, I mean, normally it depends on the policy itself. Like claims made, you have to make claims within a certain amount of time. I don't think any insurance company is being able to deny it. I mean, they know, hey, you're within the fire area, here's an address. If they don't make the claim on time, I think that'll be ignored. So I'm not too worried about that. But they need to make a claim as soon as possible, especially if they experience some sort of fire damage itself. And so that's one concern, if you will. And then the next concern comes down to the response from the insurance company. There's a few different responses, right? As you can imagine. One is outright denial. And once you get an outright denial, now you need to hire an attorney. Someone who specializes in insurance, because that's something that you could fight depending on what the denial is for. And again, it just depends on what insurance you got, right? The other part would be, let's just say you get accepted. Okay, we accept your policy, but based on your policy, we only pay X. You still consult an attorney, right? Or somebody, like a detailed insurance broker, to really review the policy. Is like, well, is that all you can claim? Is there anything more? And then also, there could be this myriad of, with an exception with a reservation of rights. And so that's an insurance term saying, hey, we accept this, but here's our rights. We come to find out it was arson, for instance, we're not paying you a dime and we're going to take our money back, that kind of stuff. So understanding what the reservation of rights is for is really key. And again, that's another thing to run by, an experienced insurance broker or an attorney to go by. The other alternative, or the other thoughts to think, is expand your mind. Make a claim on every insurance policy you have. I mean, it sounds like more of a shotgun approach, but why not, right? There may be, again, kind of the stuff we've talked about. Maybe there's certain things that insurance policy covers that your fire insurance doesn't. Kind of like that jewelry we're talking about. Maybe you have a jewelry insurance policy. Now it's time to make a claim, right? Because you lost the jewelry, I imagine, in the fire itself. Or even the homeowners insurance. Maybe it doesn't cover fire, but may cover other things. So, my advice is make claims everywhere you can.
My daughter has a great saying, and that is, closed mouths don't get fed.
Exactly.
So, if you've got it, if you don't claim, you're getting nothing.
Yep.
So claim and don't take the first no. Keep digging, keep asking. Maybe that's just the smokescreen they put up to see if you'll go away. Sometimes I think they make insurance confusing so that people do go away. But that's a little on the conspiracy side. We don't want to go there. Let's move on. By the way, those were really good summary points. I'm going to come back to that at the end for everybody's benefit, in case somebody didn't write that down. But with wildfires becoming a little more frequent, and especially in the Western United States, do you think that we're going to see changes to the real estate industry in these higher risk areas?
I don't know. And because
That's a fair answer.
I mean, here's the things that should be happening on both, we'll say the owner level and I would say the state level. Like if you look at California itself, we've been, I don't want to say overpopulated, but definitely grown quite a bit in the last 20 or 30 years to where the population is burgeoning. The problem therein lies, okay, well, where do we put people? We need to build housing somewhere. Too often the answer has been, okay, just keep on building closer to the trees. Let's eliminate some forest. And instead of, we could use, let's say fire prudent design, like a break for a mile between the forest and the houses. We haven't had that the last 10, 15 years. So when the Santa Anas pick up, can you control a 70-mile-an-hour wind? No. Can we blame climate change? I'm sorry, guys. You can't just blame climate change on something. I'm not denying it exists because it does. You can't tell me that since we've had Santa Anas for 25 years, we can't plan for it, right? Yeah, sure. You're not going to control 70-mile-an-hour winds, but you can control a mile of brush and things that could burn between the forest and the houses. That has to change, I think. Something has to change on that end. A clear demarcation between what's allowed to be built on and what should be a DMZ, if you will, for fire. Something like that. The other thing is, and there was research being designed into fire hardening houses. Like, how do you harden a house to make it fire resistant or fireproof even? I don't know where that goes. I don't know if there's some research that the state starts funding, or maybe insurance companies or other places start funding, such as our electrical and power lines, right? Because remember the fires in 2021 occurred because of PG.
Yep.
And then the other one, at least one of the fires is being linked to Southern California Edison. That's alleged. Don't hold me to it. That's all I've heard in the news. Obviously, they'll make a final determination. But these are the questions that these power companies, are facing their own challenges too. Of if they're starting fires, they're being held accountable for billions of dollars. So
Yeah, I think you just hit on a couple of really good things, and I grew up there, obviously, and I can remember Santa Ana conditions when I was a little boy. I mean,
Yep.
those have been going on, from the beginning of time. And I would agree with you that, yes, climate change is happening, but climate change does not change the fact that we've had 70 to 100-mile-an-hour winds for 50 years or longer. The climate was different then, but we still have the same result. So I don't see that as the catalyst. And I mean, here in Colorado too, well, maybe it was 4 years ago, we had a fire that ripped through a town called Broomfield in January, which, if you're not familiar with, I mean, this morning I got up to shovel some snow and it was 1 degree. It gets cold here in February and January. We watched a fire, Anthony, rip 1,000 homes in 10 minutes. It was like nothing you can imagine. And so I think that what you just hit on is, my question revolved around, are real estate transactions going to change in high risk areas? And I think your answer is spot on. And that is, the transaction's not going to change, but we can do things to mitigate risk that would accomplish several things. One, it would enhance public safety. That could be in the form of a 1-mile fire break between trees, forest, brush, and the actual home. Another would be how the home is being built, what type of materials, how close together, what type of roofing material, et cetera. Those are things that could go into play to help mitigate. And that in turn would probably help with either at least stopping the bleeding on insurance premiums, might even bring them down because we are obviously mitigating the risk that they have to cover. I think those are two really good things. And going back to my friend I referred to up in Agoura Hills, he's actually just now, 5 years later, is rebuilding. It took, I think, 3 years to get the permits done. And he did not change his footprint materially because that would change the permit process. And he's actually rebuilding in materials that cannot burn.
There you go.
And he said, I am not going to do this again. He has a fire truck on his property that he bought. It has gallons and gallons of water. And I've actually toured the property with him. It's basically built out of concrete. And, glass would be suspect, but the structure itself, you'd be all right. I joked with him. I asked, are you going to have a concrete couch? And he said no. But at the end of the day, I think you're onto something, that different building materials and putting space in between combustibles and humans would be a really, really good idea. You've got a lot of perspective, and I want to kind of open this up to you as we kind of come down the home stretch of this. You live there, you've watched it, you've watched many fires in the past. You're now advising your son, your daughter, who is going to live in LA or an area that is prone to these types of risks. What do you tell them?
Gosh, I mean that's such a difficult question, right? Because there's so many
Sorry.
factors that go into it. No, I love it. It's just, it's also a high cost of living, right? So, it's more and more difficult to live here in California.
Hmm.
Especially for my children, as it was for me. But assuming they can get over that, it's really the advice is if you decide to live there, understand that fires occur. Understand that I think our government's going to be chronically underfunded. And so I don't believe that the government is going to be the answer, unfortunately, even though that's what we expect when we pay taxes and everything like that. So the answer comes down to get as much insurance as you can, especially if you live in LA or fire prone areas, and really understand the policies, kind of what we were talking about earlier, and at least understand, if nothing else, at least understand you didn't shift the risk to an insurance company, so you're bearing that risk, whatever that is, and can you live with that?
That is really, I love what you just said there. Get as much insurance as you can.
Mhm.
Going back to what we talked about earlier, is nobody looks at their insurance check and says that's too much.
Right.
It just doesn't. A friend of mine, he ended up with a part of his policy, the friend I was referring to earlier, and they were giving him a monthly rent stipend,
Hmm.
and it was a big rent stipend. And after about 18 months, he called the insurance company because we were in COVID and there was great difficulties in navigating the bureaucracy of the County of Los Angeles, permit department.
Hmm.
And he called his insurance agent. He says, I've been at this for 18 months and I got a plan here. It's going to be a little while longer before we can get these permits in place and start building. How long do I get this rent for? Is it 3 years? Is it 2 years? Is it 5 years? And his insurance agent said, no, it's in perpetuity. It's forever. You could stay there forever. And this gets back to what you mentioned earlier is get as much as you can
Hmm.
and really get an insurance agent that understands all the different ways you can be protected, whether it's jewelry insurance, 100% coverage, additional living expense, et cetera. I think that's right on. Get as much as you can. Um,
Absolutely.
this has been really, really valuable. I can't thank you enough. I actually watched the house I grew up in Laguna Beach burn down. We didn't own it. It was about 2 or 3 years after. And even then, it's just traumatic to watch where you grew up burnt down. And now we have thousands and thousands of people in LA that are going through this. Um, how long do you think it's going to take LA to rebuild? Is
You
it
kind of hit
five
the nail on
years?
the
Is it 2 years?
I think it's closer to five, right? And if there's maybe any saving grace, and I say it with reverence as well, it's at least some of the more affluent areas, maybe they can rebuild quicker if they have the net
Mm.
worth to do so, and maybe they don't have to wait on the insurance check to do so. But that's not going to be everybody. Everybody's going to be dependent
No.
on those insurance payments and to rebuild and restock their lives, so to speak. And so, how long is that going to take? It's an unknown question because again they're going to work through the courts as far as what was the origin of the fire and then what was the contributory stuff to that fire, what contributed to it, and so it's going to take years, I think, to get through that process and then get insurance payments, and that's assuming
I,
the
I
insurance companies don't go bankrupt doing it, because I think the last I heard it was going to be $150 billion damages just from the fires. Yeah.
you almost think that there needs to be a collective pool of reinsurance. Maybe some people that chip in, other carriers, et cetera, because even though they may not be on the hook from a policy standpoint, they're part of the industry. And if enough insurance carriers go down, the industry really is going to suffer. And we can't have that. So,
And
um,
I think that really shows the state of California really need to make some changes as far as they do with their insurance companies. And don't worry, I'm not here to advocate for insurance companies. I know, that they're all looking to make profits too, but kind of what you said
sure.
is They solved this in Florida with hurricanes. Hurricanes is just as much of a danger as it is to fires here in California. And they solved it exactly what you said by doing reinsurance and really investing and the state taking on that piece, if you will, that piece, and then allowing reinsurance companies to take on the remainder, kept insurance policies premiums down as much as they could for that risk. And so hopefully, California should take a look at it and say, hey, we need to do something about the way we look at insurance in California.
Sure. And you may agree or disagree with what I'm about to say. My stance as a realtor, and as I looked out on this, and the number one thing that I would love to see property owners do is not sell. Don't sell your land. If we watch 20% of the landowners throw up their hands and say, I'm out, someone's going to give me a check, I'm leaving the state, whatever it is, we will see a really, really strong downdraft to valuations. You just can't take 20% supply and expect the values to stay. You just can't. So my guidance would be to everybody out there, follow Anthony's advice, get with your insurance provider, ask the questions, but don't go fire sell your property. No, that wasn't a pun, but if we have so many people flooding the market with supply, it's going to hurt everybody else. Do you feel the same way?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it may be, if you will, even if you try to fire sale, what are you going to fire sale necessarily? It's, you've got to fix the property. Someone's going to have to, right? So hopefully stick in there, kind of take some of the things that we've been talking about, consult an attorney, especially if you get denied, right? Because you're gonna have some insurance companies, right or wrong, that, what do insurance companies do, right? They take a premium, they invest it into annuities, and they try to make a profit to cover not only their OPEX, but also any payments that they make. So it's a business like anything else. And so insurance companies, by businesses, will try to deny claims, right or wrong, even if they, have a hint of arson, for instance, and that's an exclusion of the policy. Oh, denied. Well, you go prove it otherwise. So it's worth the fight, and to get the full value that you worked hard to do to get that property. Realize it and rebuild it for sure. I mean, you're going to see this reverberate, I think, through the local markets already, as far as people being displaced in housing right now. And, again, if this is the 3 to 5 year thing, it's unfortunately going to be a longer fix than necessary.
Yeah. And I think the number one lesson for people to take away is it's going to take time. Yep. There are no concrete answers yet. Don't make a rash decision. Don't be a knee-jerk reaction type of situation. Get with your professionals, your insurance professional, your legal professional, your financial professional, and dig in and find out what is the reality of your coverage, and be patient, because just trying to throw up your hands is not an answer, in my opinion. Let me summarize a few things for the audience and allow you to chime in if there's anything you want to add. Anthony, you provided some really, really good stuff that the people out there need to know. Number one, get your policy and pay attention to your exclusions. If you are going to look into your policy, you need to know what is not covered, and you need to dig deeper to what contributing factors are. The second thing is file your claims ASAP. A denial, go hire a lawyer. If you have a partial denial, well, get into the review process. Pay attention to the reservation of rights. Claim everything. If you've got multiple policies, claim on all of it, because it enhances your probability that you're going to get something. When it comes to your particular house, look at what you can do to limit the dangers of fire, whether it's clearing brush. Talk to your local community about creating fire breaks between your community and where the combustible items are. And if you are still standing, you have your house, get as much insurance as you can. Did I miss anything? Anything you want to add in?
No, that was perfect. Yeah, can't agree more. Claim everything you can, and if you will, I mean, unfortunately, the past is the past, right? So in the future, really get with an insurance broker or someone you trust, and really, do you really have the insurance that you want? And if you don't, then start considering getting the insurance that you want to get the premium, and pay the premiums for it. So make sure you're fully covered.
It's great advice. Anthony, it is a real pleasure and a privilege to have somebody with such a wide background of expertise in some areas that are very, very critical to join us and help out the people that are listening. So I can't thank you enough for being part of this.
No, thank you for having me. No, it's appreciate being here.
Well, I'd love to revisit it maybe in 6 months or a year, and maybe things have changed in the landscape of insurance and finance is looking a little more clear, and we can provide some more value.
Happy to help as we can, and would love to. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's tie this up and bring everybody home. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this episode of Green and Growing. In this episode, if it sparked anything in you, don't forget to like, comment, and share wherever you're listening. Stay connected to us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn and YouTube for more inspiration and exclusive content. And remember, life is not about progress or perfection. It's about being the best you can be every day for everyone around you. Cheers to Green and Growing, and we'll see you in the next episode. Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of Green and Growing. I'm your host, Wade Perry of the Perry Properties Group at eXp. Welcome,